Today we're going to be looking at Directions dye in the color Violet. So I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different pictures and video clips near the end of the video, so I just use the numbers to help us keep track of each swatch. 1 is green. I usually get a lot of requests when I'm doing purples and pinks to use green hair, so that's what that is. 2 is gray. 3 is a natural red, 4 is black, so 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then number 12 is a toned version of number 11. These are human hair swatches, but the only one that is virgin hair is going to be the number 4 black swatch. The rest have been chemically colored or bleached at some point in their little lifetimes. So with my videos, what I'll do is I will take the dye directly from the container and I will put it on the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair could take color differently. Plus, different screens and monitors can change how a color looks. So please just use my video as a kind of reference for how this could turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're gonna do a 1:8 ratio. So that is 1 part of the dye to 8 parts of diluter. And if you are unsure what diluter is, my simple answer that I like to give is that it's something that lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. Usually each brand will have their own mixing mediums, so they'll have their own version of a diluter that you can buy. But to keep things fair, I like to just use a plain white conditioner for diluting. So I want to give these time to really absorb the color. So I'm going to let these sit for 3 hours. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I'll meet you back here and we will do some comparisons. So when I was lightening this color up with my diluter, I did notice that it was leaning very pink, but now that it's on the swatches, it cooled down quite a bit. So I think I'm going to say this is like a true purple color. I mean, you can still see some of that pink coming through a little bit on the diluted section, but the direct dye looks pretty cool tone, so I think it's a true purple. So number 1 was green. On the direct dye, it definitely fully covered, but I would say it doesn't look as saturated as it does on the blonder swatches. It definitely looks a lot more smoky and kind of muted. It did cover part of the green on the diluted section, but there are some parts where you do see some green coming through, so I think it would need less diluter if you were trying to cover up your green. 2 was gray. I've said before that usually cool tones don't reflect light the same way that warmer tones do, so it does appear darker on the gray swatch and definitely a little bit more cool tone, especially on the diluted section. 3 was the natural red. There probably is a difference on the bottom. I can't really tell as of right now, but we will do before and after clips that we can look at. The top definitely did cover, but again, it's not quite as saturated looking as it does look on the blonde swatches. You do see a little bit of purple, but I think because of the red underneath, it has a slightly more warm quality to it, and again, is a little bit darker. Kind of reminds me of maybe the number 7 or maybe between the 6 and 7 swatch. 4 had no change. 5, I can see a difference between the top and the bottom, but it really only looks darker. I can't really see any purple. Similar with number 6, you can definitely see a difference. At least in this light though, it still kind of looks brown, maybe with a slight purple undertone. Maybe like in sunlight you would see the nice purples coming through. And basically it just gets progressively more and more purple the lighter the underneath hair gets, and easier to see in not direct lighting, if that makes any sense. As for the diluted section, I think it's pretty clear that it looks the most intentional on the 10, 11, and 12. You do see a slight difference in the number 9. It almost looks like it toned out some of the more yellow tones in the hair, which is really interesting because it looks a little bit more cool tone, but not quite purple on the number 9. And then these ones don't, at least currently, look much different. So it's actually harder than I thought to find dupes or comparisons for these. It seems like all of my purples either lean a little bit too warm or a little bit too cool. So I'll show you the most similar ones that I have currently, but I actually don't have any that are like this on their own. So let's start with the more warm tone comparison, and that's going to be Arctic Fox in the color Purple AF. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. And if you're confused, just so you know, Purple AF from Arctic Fox is the new name for their Purple Rain, is what it used to be. So I'm sure you can tell with the diluted sections alone just how different the undertones are, but I did want to cover those up really quick just so we can only look at the direct dye portions. So it's a little bit harder to tell like this because they're both kind of the same depth of purple. I think the warm tones in the Arctic Fox one dyes the darker ones a little bit better, or at least makes it look a little bit more purple on darker swatches. But yeah, if we're looking at just like the platinum blonde swatch, on their own they do look very similar. I don't know if you'll be able to tell on camera. I can still see a difference. It's just not as varied as when you see the diluted sections. Like I said, both are very pigmented. I think though, if you have darker hair, something like the Arctic Fox or even just warmer toned purples would probably be a little bit better. But when it comes to like lighter blondes and platinum blondes, it's kind of preference. The more cool toned one that I have that's the most similar, that's not too cool toned, is Manic Panic in the color Electric Amethyst. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. The Manic Panic is definitely lighter and does to me look like it's a touch more blue. I do still see a little bit of that pink coming through on the directions, and it only really seems to stay super cool toned on the more cool toned swatches like the toned swatch and the gray swatch. If your hair has any yellow in it, which most people's will, I think it'll have a slightly more pink look to it. And if you don't want that, then the Manic Panic Electric Amethyst would be a better option. But the Electric Amethyst is not as pigmented. You can see even on like the 9 and the 10, it dyes it, but you don't really see those really pretty purples coming through as much. It looks a lot more smoky versus on the Platinum Blonde. So in the future, if I do find any dyes that look like this Directions dye, then of course I will compare them. But as for right now, these are the two closest that I currently have. Alright, so now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything after this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out, but just remember I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.